every A influence has an equal and opposite force to it, doesn't it? Right? One guy over here is rich, another guy over here is poor, and then they switch roles, not necessarily positions, but things move around. Things are constantly bouncing around. That's the nature of it. That's how equilibrium, or the law of one, manifests itself on our level. It's much simpler on the higher levels. Yeah, if you're thinking about like humanity as a whole, you've at any point in time got 96 forces, if you want to think of it that way. 96 forces all bouncing out to the rim and coming back for every single event that happens that's trying to reestablish this sort of unity. Now, what question does that cause in you? I'll tell you the question it causes in me. How do you simplify? How do you get out of it? How do you get to the point in the ray of creation where you're only dealing with those three fundamental forces, instead of 96 things coming at you, 96 things spreading away from you for every thought you have, and 96 things coming back to you? How do you get to the point where it's so much more fundamental? Ooh, I saw that. Yeah. Okay. Now, I said in the beginning that this really has to do with things like life and death, and threw a word in there that you probably weren't expecting, which is love. The reason for death is because of life. You see, drop another pebble in if you don't believe me. You think of this. That's birth. And it bounces back and forth until it dies. Yeah? It resolves back into the homeostasis. Life wasn't there before. Then it was. And it comes back and it nulls itself out. Death is not one of these things that's, well, first of all, it's not the opposite of life. What is the opposite?
Nothing.
Let's entertain that for a minute, because what it's trying to achieve is nothing. When you drop the pebble in, it bounces back and forth until it can get rid of that extra force, right? Until it becomes that homeostasis in there. What's the cause of life? We can start at that end of it. We have an expression, don't we, in English? Right? Very polite way of saying having sex is that you're making love. Yeah, you have that in England too? Oh, of course. Right?
Yeah.
It's the physical manifestation of love. Life is. Have you thought of it that way before? You should have, because yeah, that's the impulse that creates it. Now, when a man and woman love each other, or a squirrel and another squirrel love each other, doesn't matter. Yeah, when a pollen loves the whatever. Yeah. The idea is that it generates this impulse of life, which then sets in motion this kind of ripple effect throughout the universe. But love comes outside of it. What does the Bible say? The Bible says God is love. Right? And so the impulse of life comes from outside of the system. So the opposite of love is death. The opposite of death is love. Not life. They're all part of the same bar. Today's going to be challenging, I can see, because we're right on at the end of this particular cycle. Love transcends it. Love transcends both life and death. It is the cause of both. Therefore, the opposite. You know the idea of the vectors, right? We see everything sort of skewed. You've got life and death on one bar, and love and equilibrium on the other. That's how it would be. Look.
Yeah.
Take your pebble again. Take another pebble.
Right.
This time, don't drop it in just yet. Each of you do this if you wish. Don't drop it in just yet. But see equilibrium in the cup or the bowl. You
Yeah.
see the equilibrium? It's at rest. Now you, something from outside, in other words, God in this scenario here, love. And that creates life and death. Life is the outward ripple, death is the inward ripple, and they just they go back and forth and annihilate one another.
Yeah.
That's the cycle of it. Okay. Now, in where are we going to go with this? You see, what I'm trying to get at is this: is that the method of development really is about love. The method of development, if you want to get outside of this, if you want to kind of climb the ladder of the ray of creation, well, that's a bad analogy because I've always said you sort of step off of it, right? But if you wish to climb the ladder in this analogy of the ray of creation, it's not about struggle. It's not about fight. It's not about challenging. It's just about love. Yeah? Have more of that in your life. Have more love in your life. And what you're doing is you're putting yourself in sympathy with that outside influence that creates life to begin with.